strong.
What's going on, everyone? Today on Between the Dots, we're giving our Eastern Conference predictions. We got a good episode on tap today. How's everybody doing today? How you guys doing?
Feeling good. Ready for episode 2?
Oh yeah, right
ready
on.
to dive into the East.
Yeah, let's get to it. So what's coming up today? Like I said, the Eastern Conference predictions. We'll go through kind of each division, give our thoughts on it. Each of us have prepared our predictions, and then we also have. We'll touch on our fantasy hockey league. We'll give an update on the Mike Babcock situation. Excuse me, and go from there. And then get into our Eastern Conference predictions. Cool. So just to kind of touch base with the fantasy hockey league, we are at 17 guys. We added a couple last week, so there's room for one more.
Yeah, we were originally going to do 16. I've never done a league with this many guys, so it'll be interesting. But yeah, up to 17 now. Looking for one more to make 18 total teams.
Yeah, so our draft for that is going to be on Wednesday, October 4th at 8 p.m. Each of us also have a team in the league, so it's a chance to kind of compete against us, test your hockey knowledge, and see if you can win some money as well too, and some prizes, some giveaways throughout that as well too. Yeah.
I think a good place to start, fellas, is like Falks mentioned off the top, Mike Babcock. What is he doing? Like, we talked about it a bit the first episode, but as soon as something like that comes out, you start to hear more and more. And he ultimately stepped down, I guess. He's probably going to get fired if he didn't step down, because more guys started to come out about it. And I read, so Boone Jenner said that it was all good, like everything was normal, the questions he was asking was fine, but apparently it was the young guys that were more kind of like starting to say, no, this like wasn't all right. He was asking us see our phones, look at our pictures, like the world we live in today with like social media too. As soon like you say one wrong word, it just blows up. But that's not what I think happened here. I think this was full on just not right on a coach to do. When you hear about what he did in Toronto as well, like just he was out of the league for a few years. You'd think like at least for a few months, get into the season, get things going. Like you're putting a dark cloud over Columbus before the season even starts, and they're going to be. I don't think they're going to have the best year. You'll see that in our predictions, I guess, from everyone. But yeah, what do you guys think about Mike Babcock and what went on there?
Well, they kind of like management was downplaying it for a little bit, saying, "Oh, it's not a big deal. It's not all cracked up as what the media is saying." But then once a guy actually steps down and resigns, you know that that's coming from management internally, right? Like, you know, he's not just making the decision on his own. If he decided, like, if it actually wasn't that serious, he's going to brush it off and start focusing on coaching that team, right? So stepping down, you know that there must have been something more going on. Maybe some more information comes out in the coming days or weeks. But I did a little bit of digging, and Babcock's setting some records. He is the first coach to officially be hired and fired without coaching a single game. So
Wow, that's tough. What do you think?
Did some research. Paul Thompson was fired after one game for the Blackhawks in 1944. So that was the quickest firing. So
must have been a tough game.
They lost 11-5. Yeah.
Man, what about like Jarmo Kekalainen too? He got it just completely wrong, obviously.
And I don't know. I just think it's obviously he got it, yeah, very wrong. And now you just have to backpedal. Like, yeah, I know I made a mistake. Season hasn't started yet. And everyone, like I said, I know, well, a lot of people obviously know that Columbus, I don't think he's going to be a cup contender. So it's like, okay, we're not going to be good. Our coach did this before the season. Like, great start, guys. Or for the rookies, like, what do those guys think? Like, I thought I'm in the NHL now, and this is what it's like. Like, you hear about these weird stories in junior, how the coach does something stupid and then they leave or whatever. But in the NHL, this is happening. Like, it's hard to believe when you hear stuff like this.
They might be a little relieved, honestly.
Yeah.
Those younger players.
Yeah, Columbus is going to be in. I mean, if they weren't already kind of looking rough for this year, they're definitely looking rough now after that situation. So, wonder where they're going to end up in our predictions for our standings that we're going to provide here. So, why don't you go first, Roy, with your predictions here?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
So these are Rory's picks up on the screen here. I'll let him talk about them.
Yeah, so it was tough to sort them for sure. As far as 1-2, I think that Toronto will edge out New Jersey. Just yeah, stick taps for Kijo there.
Sure, man. At least they're the best. Anyone says they're not, it's wrong. At least they're the best.
I think they added the types of pieces that they needed to add. I guess we touched on that a bit last week. This might be a bit of a trend with the East, though, too, but goaltending just kind of being a question mark. Them in New Jersey are sort of on that same level. Like, I want to say New Jersey's going to improve, but Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanacek, it's tough to say. Like, they'll be the beast of the East with that kind of goaltending, too. A little bit more shaky on the back end too. A couple younger names, so I think like Boston obviously is gonna fall off a little bit, but I don't think it's gonna be as steep or as quick as people are expecting. Like, they lost their 1 and 2 centers, but they still have a good team around them. Their wingers are still really good. Their defense is really deep. I don't know if the goaltending can sustain what they did last year, because that was out of this world, but I think they're still going to make playoffs. Like, people saying that they're just going to miss completely, I think that's a little bit too much to expect so far. So
and they got Brad Marchand wearing the C now, eh?
Yeah, that's an interest, maybe one of the more interesting captaincies in the league.
The guy licks other players and now he's captain. Lead the way, pal.
I mean, they lost their number 1 and number 2 center, so that's kind of why you have them taking a step back, but obviously still good enough to make playoffs, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like, sort of a similar level to Tampa. It's like, gotta see, like, prove it that you're actually falling off before we're gonna write you off, you know?
Yeah.
So, but hey, taking a step forward, the Sabres, the young Sabres, I think they're going to make it this year. Their offense and their defense are incredible. I think it all hinges on Levi, though. Goaltending, like, he only played a few games last year. He looked really good, but everyone on that team is just a little bit more mature, has a few more games under their belt, and yeah, I think they're going to edge out Florida, who I think Bobrovsky's just a total wild card. They're missing their top defender, Montour, for a while, and their D-core overall is just kind of shaky. Both them and Vegas are going to experience the slump. Like, they're going to experience a bit of a hangover playing late into June. I don't think they're all cracked up to be. So I got them just missing out. So
how big's your gap between like those teams too that are like wild card versus like even like the 13th place team who you have as Ottawa there? I see that. So I'm curious to see why you put them down there as well.
Because they're garbage.
Hey, they were close last year, so 13th would be a step back for them. So I hope Rory's wrong. I hope he's wrong. But in that regard, I hope he's wrong in that regard.
I think there's a massive gap between Columbus and Ottawa. I think between Buffalo and Ottawa, it's really tight. And it was, I don't know, it was like 9 through 13 can be all interchangeable. Like, the Islanders them adding Horvat when Barzal was in the lineup, they look great. Washington didn't have Carlson or Backstrom, so both of them being back in that lineup, I think you got to expect them to do better than last year. And then I'd say Detroit and Ottawa are just neck and neck.
Yeah.
So
Well, even last year too, the gap between Detroit and that last playoff spot was 13 points. It was 12 points actually. So, I mean, that gap last year wasn't even that big as well. Like Washington and Detroit last year finished with identical records. So I think all those teams are going to be kind of clumped together as well this year too. And then I agree with those kind of three teams kind of down at the bottom.
yeah, I think like the one thing I feel like I notice is goalies in their first year with a new team sort of they take longer to get the hang of that team's system. So for Ottawa, it'll be interesting to see how well Korpisalo adapts. Like, hey, maybe he proves me wrong, but kind of the same thing with Washington. Like Kemper, not great last year, but now he kind of has a better idea of what to expect this year with Washington and their system. So I think that he's going to be better there as well.
Yep, that's fair.
But Columbus was one of the teams I was thinking was going to take like a big jump this year, but obviously they're still at the bottom. But like they added Severson and Provorov, which would be like a great second pairing. They added an entirely new second pair, and their forwards are so young. Like there's so much skill on that roster that I think that they will, similar to Buffalo, but to a lesser extent, they're going to take a jump as well.
Yeah,
just in their production. So
they could have that attitude too in the locker room where they're like everybody expects nothing from us, especially after the whole coaching situation that's gone on. So I think that could make them kind of rally together as well. And still, they're not going to be a great team this year, but probably not dead last.
We'll see how Merzlikins does, kind of having the net to himself too.
Yeah, I like the pickups they made with Provorov too. I think that's going to help.
Yeah, guys. For sure.
Cool. Kijo, you had some things a little different on yours.
Yeah, so I'll start off. Surprise, I got the Leafs number one. I think I'll start off in the Atlantic. I think the Leafs, they got the core four. Like Roy mentioned, we talked about this last episode, but Bertuzzi, Domi, Klingberg. I know Ryan Reeves isn't going to score a lot of goals, but he's a guy when he's on the ice. If you're on the other team, you know he's out there. Keeping your head up because you know, okay, he's not going to put the puck in the back of the net, but he might set you down. There might be a big hit. Whatever he does, whether it's a fight, a hit, goes into the corners, I think he's going to really help the Leafs. When you got guys like William Nylander that don't like to get touched at all, I think Reeves is going to help out with that. And then this one was tough. I was thinking about this throughout the day, maybe putting Florida too high, but they got to the Stanley Cup final. I mean, there was a few subtractions, I guess, with Duclair out, both the Stahl brothers out. But the few additions they made with Evan Rodriguez, who it's not a big name, but I honestly think that he's a guy that a fresh start, put him on a new team, I think he could do some damage, whether it's on a second line or a third line, just a good depth player, along with Ekman Larson. This is another wild card. What do you guys think OEL is going to bring this year to Florida?
Little veteran presence. Like they got Kulikov in there too, as well on D. So they needed to fill the gaps with Ekblad and Montour being out for the first little bit due to the injuries they sustained last year in the Cup Finals. So it's we'll see how they do as well. But I can see them they still got I know Matt Tkachuk's going to be out as well too for a bit this year at the start. So but when those guys come back, they look like a great team, and I really like Carter Verhaeghe too actually on their team as well, and Barkov. Like they still got a great team and very deep down the middle, which is important in the NHL.
Yeah, for sure. And then the third in the Atlantic, I have Tampa, and I honestly just have Tampa as Tampa. I mean, they've still got the same guys, not a lot of off-season moves. Vasilevsky and net. I mean, I don't think they're gonna change a whole lot. They've been a solid team for a while, and I think this year they'll continue to be pretty solid. Um, and then in the Metro, so I was looking at stuff. Carolina, I have at number one. Their D core is Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesci, Dmitry Orlov, and Tony D'Angelo. Those are their 6D. Like, those are six solid D. Like, some teams, it's you think like, oh, who's going to be number 5 and 6? Where are these guys going to slot in the lineup? But those definitely the best D core in the NHL, in my opinion. If you're and they, again, up front, their forwards are solid. Some young guys that want to prove themselves. Carolina's always been solid, but I just think if you have a D core like that, you're not going to give up a lot. So some nights they might not have the best offense, but if you're only giving up a goal or two, obviously every team's going to have their bad night, but I think that those D will carry them for sure this year. Because even if you have an injury, like I said, you've got those 6D, an injury 1 or 2 on the blue line isn't going to kill you, whereas some teams it would. So that's why I have Carolina up at number one.
Michael Bunting heading to the Canes as well too in the offseason.
Yeah,
Former
Bunting
Leaf.
is. I was going to get into with the subtractions with the Leafs, but Bunting was, I don't know, he was good when he got there, and he was still solid like in Toronto. I just think even for him going to a new team, he can pretty much play anywhere in that lineup, kind of like he did in Toronto. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes in terms of where he slots in that lineup. But yeah, Carolina is going to be up there for sure. And then New Jersey, they've got Tyler Toffoli, that addition in the offseason. I think he's kind of underrated. Like they get a full season of Timo Meier. Jack Hughes is back again, another year of experience. You add Tyler Toffoli in there, it's just gonna. I think he'll help that lineup again wherever he plays. They're a fun team to watch too. These young teams are sometimes when you watch, like I was gonna say it later on, but like the Islanders. I mean, Bo Horvat's gonna help with that. But even when the Islanders are good, in my opinion, they're not that fun to watch. I mean, don't score a lot. They're good defensively. They play like the boring style of hockey, I guess. But no, it'll be fun to watch them for sure. And then the Rangers. So a few additions in the offseason. Again, a solid D-core. Blake Wheeler, I think, is going to be really good there. He went through the whole thing in Winnipeg with have the C come off his jersey and that whole, like, that's just got to be weird for a guy no matter how long you've been there or what's going on there. So I think the fresh start for him will rejuvenate him a little bit. And then, again, solid goalies. Shesterkin. I mean, and then I think he's got Quick backing him up. It's tough to get top goaltenders in the league, but Shesterkin's definitely up there. Any thoughts on my top three in the Atlantic and the Metro?
I like the Rangers a lot. They got young, tall D2 with Schneider, and they just re-signed Miller as well. Like I like them. They're definitely not to the degree of Carolina, but like, do you think that those young guys like Kakko and Lafreniere, do you think that they're gonna pop? Do you think that they're gonna find that gear that everybody expects of them?
They better soon, or those are going to be 2 draft picks that, like, I don't know. Lafreniere was like, that could be one of the. I hope he's not a bust, but 2 guys like that you draft that high, like, if, in my opinion, if they're going to figure it out, like, I know it's different for, let's say, goalies. They take a few years in the NHL. Some of them don't get good until their later 20s or whatever. But for these guys, like, I think if they're going to figure it out, it's going to be this season. And if not, do they think about going elsewhere? What happens there? I don't know. But if they're going to figure it out, it's definitely this year where it's got to get done, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy about Lafreniere. I mean, he was so highly touted too. Like, that was one guy I thought that was going to come in and possibly be like a point per game player right away. I know in fantasy drafts, people were drafting him in his rookie year like he was going to be that good. So it's that's still surprising me. So maybe he takes a step forward this year. Obviously, the Rangers hope so. But I agree with those 3 teams being at the top of the Metro. I have them in a slightly different order from that, I think. But I can definitely see that those 3 teams being at the top. And, yeah, I agree with the Atlantic as well. My one bone to pick, actually, with the Atlantic would maybe be Florida, a little lower. but I could still see them, being able to get in the playoffs and get one of those 3 spots there.
Yeah, honestly, for like these teams with, I feel like it's the same year after year. Like I would like to see a Buffalo or an Ottawa jump into the playoffs. Obviously, I don't have them in, but it would be nice to see one of those teams get in. And then obviously my first wild card, Boston. They've been solid for a while. They lost 2 centers again, like Bergeron retiring. That's going to be tough. The other guys are going to have to make up for it, but still got Pasternak, Marchand, like Rory mentioned, solid goaltending. Is it going to be what it was last year? We're yet to find out, but that'll be interesting. I think Boston will continue to be good, and they will for sure get in. And then another team, Pittsburgh. I think I have them at wild card too, but honestly, I think they could even move up a little bit. I know they didn't make the playoffs last year, but they've got Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, and Gensel's going to come back. I know he's injured, but you put him into that lineup. They added Riley Smith, Noel Acciari, Nedeljkovic is another goaltender they added as well. So I think that team is just, with those additions, I don't care how old you are. Said it in the last episode, Pittsburgh's going to be good. And if I'm any of those other teams in the East, I'm scared of Pittsburgh every night I play them. You never know what Letang or Carlson's going to do on the point. Malkin and Crosby up front. And then talking about the teams that are fun to watch, not all the teams that are fun to watch make the playoffs, like the Buffalo Sabres. Didn't change a whole lot in the offseason. But yeah, their goaltending scares me a little bit with Devin Levi and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I think the best name in the show, but we'll yet to see what he's like between the pipes. But their goalies scare me. That's what it is. That's why I think I have them on the outside looking in. And then, sorry, Felix, don't have the Sens in there. They're just, I don't know. I got them at number 10. Good young core. I just don't think they're quite there yet. I mean, you have Chychrun all year. That's going to help. Tarasenko addition, obviously, that'll be fun to watch. I think it'll be good for them. But losing to Brinkat, that'll be tough. I know Tarasenko's kind of like his replacement, but I just think that DeBrincat brings a lot and did bring a lot to Ottawa, so that'll be tough to see him go. But Kubalik, another addition for them. I think he's a name that not a lot of people talk about, but I do think he brings a lot to whatever team he plays on. I mean, in Detroit he was good, and he'll be good in Ottawa, but I have them on the outside looking in, followed by the Islanders, then the Caps. The Caps also were tough. I think they might be finished a little higher than I had them, but I didn't want to put them above the Sens for you, Felix. I didn't want to do that to you. And then Detroit. Sorry, Rory. Wings aren't good. Philly, I think, I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about these teams because I think they haven't really changed a whole lot. I mean, Montreal, again, good young players with Suzuki and Caulfield, but I think that it'll be another year or two until they start to really move their way up the standings. And then Columbus, I mean, if I'm watching a Blue Jackets game, it's going to be tune in to see Fantilli play. Other than that, maybe the odd Goudreau goal, but don't think I'll be watching a lot of the Blue Jackets. But yeah, that's how my Eastern Conference is, 1 to 16.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, both you guys obviously not putting Ottawa in the playoffs. I understand. I can see why, because for me, what's lacking for them is their bottom 6. But it's whether or not, like you said, they got a good young core, and that's what it's going to come down to for those guys, is whether or not that young core can get it done. Everything else there, go ahead.
It's just a tough justification because of the teams ahead of them, right? Like you said, Kijo, having Pittsburgh, you wouldn't be surprised if they ended up higher than that. I agree. It seems like such a disservice putting that team in wild card 2. I wanted to move them up, but it's who are you knocking out of there, right? The Rangers, Devils, Canes, it's tough to justify any of them. Who would be, if there was one of the top 3 of either the Atlantic or the Metro, who would you not be so surprised with missing the playoffs if one of them did? Like, who would be
In
your
the
one
top
pick?
in the top three that are currently in the
Yeah,
top three, I think
yeah.
it's got to be. I know I had them too, but Florida, I could I could see
Oh
them
yeah, your Florida pick.
falling out. But if I was to pick one from the Metro, I think the Rangers, just because Pittsburgh, like you just said, Pittsburgh's going to be good. Carolina is good. New Jersey's good. Like a lot of good teams in the East. But yeah, from the Metro, I would pick the Rangers to fall out, and maybe the Penguins slide in there. And yeah, a lot of good teams.
Yeah. Well, I've been reserving my opinions until now. These are my picks here. So I have in the Atlantic the Leafs, the Lightning, and the Buffalo Sabres claiming that third spot. Two key misses that I have from the Atlantic that's a little bit different from yours, both yours, was I have Boston and I have Florida both missing playoffs this year. Now, I know that's like bold because the past 2 years, the same four teams have made it from the Atlantic every year. It's been Boston, Tampa, Toronto, and Florida in whatever order it is. It's changed. The 1 year Florida won President's Trophy. The 1 year the Leafs last year came first, and Florida grabbed the wild card. So Tampa as well has finished third in the Atlantic for the past 2 years. So for me, the change that we're going to see this year, it's Boston and it's Florida that end up kind of dropping. I would consider switching Tampa with Boston as well in that number two spot because I'm not sold yet. I think both those teams lost a lot of guys that were key players this year. Like so for Tampa, they lose Killorn, who is a massive part of their team, but I justify putting them second because they still have their core players there, and they still have good centermen down the middle, and they got great D and obviously Vasilevsky as well. So that's to me why I still kept Tampa in. I think they're going to be able to manage. I would even consider. I thought about putting Buffalo at 2 even this year, just because
No, you didn't.
I
No, you
love
didn't.
what Buffalo's got going on in their top four lines. Like they got even on their fourth line, they're looking at like Okposo, Tyson Jost, and Gergensons on their fourth line. Okay, they got Owen
Gergenson's the
Power,
former All Star.
former All Star, exactly on their fourth line. They got Owen Power. All right, he's getting better. They got Dahlin. He's young, getting better. They brought in two new defensemen, so similar to what New Jersey kind of did last year, bringing in with Matt Marino last year, and they made a big jump this year. So Buffalo brings in a couple D-man, and I like what they have going on, and their trajectory. Last year they only missed by 1 point or 2 points last year in the playoffs. So they were right there, right to the end, pretty much, even more so than Ottawa was. So for me, their next, I guess, logical step forward for them is to actually take one of those three spots or maybe make wild card. So those are my top three in the Atlantic. Leafs obviously first. I like what they have going on too. I can't argue that I think they have one of the deepest lineups right now. But it doesn't matter what they do in the regular season. We can sit here all we want and talk about the Leafs in the regular season, but it doesn't matter.
You
What matters
you
is what
saying
they
the
do in the
words
playoffs.
Leafs obviously first is going to be a great clip.
Yeah.
I can't
And
wait.
then when we're gonna have to clip that and put it for when they miss.
Yeah. Okay.
So then on to the Metro. I have Carolina, the Rangers, and the Devils. So again, those top three teams, I think we were all in close agreement on that those are the three teams that we think are going to be at the top of the Metro. I don't think that the gap is going to be as big as it was last year from team number 3 to that wild card team, Pittsburgh. And that's why I put them as wild card 1 because like Pittsburgh, I really like the additions they've made with Carlson obviously coming in, Riley Smith, and Nola Chari getting deeper down the middle as well. So I really like what Pittsburgh's done. So I could even see them taking over that number 3 spot maybe instead of New Jersey because New Jersey was they made it all. They had a long run last year, made it to the finals kind of thing. So it was a good run for them. And then from then on, I have Ottawa making wild card two, which is kind of a big deal. So
It would be a big deal. That'd be huge for you.
yeah, yeah. So that was kind of where we were we were had like different opinions a little bit on that there. So Ottawa's
Yeah.
making playoffs for me just because it's it's gonna be it's gonna be close. Again, I don't think that gap between wild card two and that number nine team is gonna be huge. It's gonna come right down to the wire, just like it did last year. And I think Ottawa's going to be fighting right in there, along with Boston, along with Florida, and maybe even Detroit as well. They've gotten significantly better this year too. So with Ottawa, my reasoning is just that young core making that step forward, and teams like Boston, who are probably like maybe a little worn out from all the hockey they've been playing, they lose their key centerman with Bergeron and Krejci. That makes a huge difference. Boston does not look good down the middle right now. I think they have it's Pavel Zacha is their number one center, and then they got Charlie Coyle. They bring in Morgan Geekie and Boquist as well. So it's I I don't see enough. I don't love Boston enough to justify putting them in. But again, I think it's the gap is going to be so small this year that I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that I really can't see them making the playoffs this year. Even Florida, I think like if Florida can get through the first couple months of the regular season with all the injuries they've had, then I think they could easily make playoffs too. But this is how I have it set right now, based on how teams are starting the year and how I think it's going to go. So you guys can kind of comment on my teams that are making the playoffs if you want, maybe some of them that are missing.
I love Boston missing. So good. That's keep them out of there.
They've won enough.
They have. Keep them out of the playoffs. I don't want them there. I think we kind of all had them in the same area, but for me, it's Washington. Where are they gonna? Are they really gonna be that low? Like, is Ovi gonna? How many goals is Ovi gonna score? Is I don't know, the Washington one, and yeah, like I said, we all had them lower, but any chance Washington sneaks in? What do we think?
I feel bad for putting them that low because I want Ovi to do well. It's just like last year, they finished the same amount of points as Detroit last year, so I can't see them being that much better. They didn't make enough additions in the offseason, for me at least, in my opinion. I don't know what you think, Roy.
Well, they missed Carlson basically all year, so imagine getting your 1D back and then Backstrom as well. So I think he missed most of the year. Or he missed a lot of time anyways. He had was it the hips, I think? Hip surgery or something like that. Like pretty big blow. So if they both had a full off season, able to actually train and get back up to speed, like I could see them maybe squeaking wild card two. That'd be like best case scenario, I think. But like for Boston, like one thing I just thought of was Boston didn't have Krejci the year before. I don't know the last time that Bergeron played a full 82, but just picturing them to drop 30 points in the standings is like a lot. That's like a crazy blow for one team.
It wasn't
in
just
one
them
year.
though. It wasn't just them they lost. They lose Taylor Hall, right? They're
Yeah.
losing Orlov. They're losing Foligno. They're losing
Bertuzzi they had
Hathaway.
for a bit in the playoffs too.
Bertuzzi contributed to those 135 points last year. And the thing is, like, surprises happen. So anything can happen. And
Well,
for
clearly
me,
they
it's
happen. You got Ottawa in the playoffs.
yeah. And you know what? Boston's fallen off. All right. New Jersey last year had a surprise year. All right. So there's surprises every year. And I think this year one of them could be that Boston's like kind of historical drop off could be one of them, along with Florida missing as well too. Like it's time for these like young teams to maybe make a step forward. I know you guys, played it safe and you took all the old veteran guys still making the playoffs, but I I think at least for me with the Atlantic, I think things could shift a little bit this year. Buffalo's looking to take a step forward. Ottawa's looking to take a step forward. both those teams finished with, well, Ottawa finished with 86 points. So if they finish with even a little bit more than that this year, that's a step forward. And same goes for Buffalo. They finished with 91 last year. So if they take just the slightest step forwards, then they're both in the playoffs. And it's the thing is who doesn't make it, who misses, and that's the tough question. So for me, that's kind of how I think it might shake down. And then the same, we all had the same kind of bottom three teams there in the basement. But overall, that's where I'm at.
At the beginning, when you said that you could see Boston being interchangeable with Tampa, I think, did you mean like Tampa missing and Boston being in second, or just Boston being in second and shifting Tampa down?
I'm switching completely, like possibly Tampa missing and Boston
So
finishing second.
when I asked Kijo that question about like the surprise team to miss, I
Mhm.
was thinking of Tampa because I was looking at their team today and it's like why they were so good was the depth that they had, and you see that depth shifted up a line. Like Cirelli was that third line center, and now you have like Hagel on that second line with Connor Sheary, and it's like they don't have the depth anymore. They have the top end skill, but their bottom six is nothing compared to what it was. And same for the defense. So the only reason that I still had them at third was because Hedman is still your first defenseman, Vazzy's still your primary goalie, but then they load up that top line with Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point. And then what are you going to get from the other 50% of your lineup, right?
Yeah, like they still have Nick Paul, and they brought in a lot of journeymen this year too for the fourth line, like Tyler Mott, ex-Sen. He's on that fourth line now. So is Logan Brown too, ex-Sen as well. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing for Tampa, but I agree. Like that loss too of Killorn is going to be huge. He was like a character guy on that team, and like I agree. I think either one of those, like Boston or Tampa, I thought you could interchange them at two, like switch them right out. Like one of them, I think one of them this year is going to miss. And for me, like I thought Tampa was just a little bit stronger looking still, but if you go by like kind of the trends, Tampa has been losing more points for the past 2 3 years. Like they've hit their peak and now they're on their decline a little bit. So it's I think last year they finished with it was like 90 something points as well too. So they weren't that far ahead of like the wild card two spot even. So if they lose a few extra games this year, they could be the team that misses. But I think one of those teams is falling off a little bit this year, and then a team like Buffalo and hopefully Ottawa as well would possibly fill in for them.
The fact that you have Ottawa in there, Felix, I'm going to say it right now. If Ottawa makes the playoffs, we can go and I will buy the tickets.
Oh,
If
I
Ottawa
hope
makes
they
the
make
Wow.
it. I hope they make it. I really do. It's been too long. Then this core, they got to get it done. Kijo's going to be the anti-Sens fan now all year, so he doesn't have to buy tickets to the Sens playoff game.
Hey, I
Put
would
that on
go.
the
It would be
board.
good.
Would you wear a Sens jersey for it, or?
Okay, let's back up a minute. All right.
Yeah. No, that sounds good though.
Or
I
put
hope
it on
they
the banner.
I hope they do. I hope they can. We'll see. We'll see. And I tried not to be biased. I legitimately think though that they finished last year with 86 points. So if they can just literally get to 91 points, that's a few extra wins, and everyone remembered how bad they were at the start of last year, going like 1-13. You take out that bad start, and now we have Chikrin for a whole year. All these guys ready to go, already training in camp. I think they can manage to get the amount of points that they need for playoffs. It's a long season. And we'll see what happens.
I like it. I think those are some solid predictions, fellas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
overall.
I think that the West is going to be a lot easier. I think you know who your teams are in the top three, and there's just a much more clear separation from those teams at the top that are contending versus those rebuilding teams. So I think it'll be a lot easier. And yeah, I mean, a lot of ours look the same aside from a couple teams, but yeah, next week will be interesting. I'm excited to look at the West.
Yeah. So speaking of next week, that's what's coming up. Next week's going to be our Western Conference predictions, And then following that, that next Wednesday is going to be our big fantasy draft night on October 4th. That's going to happen at 8 p.m. And leading up to that, we're going to be doing our fantasy draft special. So you guys can tune in for that for all our tips and stuff. We'll dive into that. And then after that, it's a week after that, it's the regular season gets going. So it's right around the corner. It's exciting times.
I'm so pumped for hockey to get started again.
Yep. That'll be good stuff. Cool. Throughout the podcast, a few of the listeners commented on some things. Hinch said, if the Leafs win the President's Trophy, that they're winning the Cup. Screw the first place curse. So
I love it. Yes, Hinch. I love it.
Here we go again.
It's our year. I said it already. It's our year.
Yeah. All right,
That's
guys.
not a biased comment either. I don't even know if he's a Leafs fan.
Yeah, good stuff. So, all in all, everyone, thanks for watching, tuning in this week. The episode's going to be posted on our YouTube channel and then also posted to Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you want to listen there. But yeah, thanks for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And yeah, we look forward to doing it again next week and providing some content for you all year long.
See you next week.
Yeah, let's go.